The glass shattered against the wall only inches from Sophia Harper's head, sending shards tinkling to the floorboards of her small restaurant like deadly rain. Her heart pounded as she pressed herself against the kitchen doorframe, facing down the four men whose unkempt appearance and gun-laden hips marked them as nothing short of trouble. It was 1884 in White Oaks, New Mexico, and trouble was the last thing her struggling establishment needed. "I said we're hungry, woman." The tallest outlaw slammed his fist on the nearest table, causing the salt and pepper shakers to jump. His dark beard was streaked with gray, eyes bloodshot from what Sophia guessed was a long night of drinking. "And when Jeb Harker says he's hungry, folks round these parts know to start cooking." Sophia straightened her apron, trying to hide the trembling in her hands. At 26, she'd weathered plenty of difficult customers in the 3 years since she'd inherited the White Oaks eatery from her late father. But these men were different. Their eyes held a dangerous gleam. She recognized all too well the look of men who took what they wanted regardless of who got hurt. "The kitchen is closed, gentlemen," she said, forcing steel into her voice despite the fear clawing at her throat. "I open at 6 tomorrow morning." "You're welcome to return then." The second outlaw, a wiry man with a pockmarked face, laughed and kicked over a chair. "Ain't you heard? We're the Clayton gang. We don't wait for breakfast like ordinary folk." Sophia felt her blood run cold. The Clayton gang had been terrorizing small towns across the territory for months, robbing, burning, and worse. Just last week, they'd reportedly shot a shopkeeper in Lincoln County for refusing to hand over his earnings. "I'm afraid I don't have much prepared," Sophia said, taking an instinctive step backward toward the kitchen. The third outlaw, younger than the others but with eyes just as hard, drew his pistol and pointed it casually in her direction. "Then I reckon you'd best get to preparing something, miss." "Harper," she supplied, her mouth dry. "Sophia Harper." "Well, Miss Harper," said the fourth man, a hulking figure with a jagged scar running down his cheek, "you've got yourself some hungry guests, 4 steaks, beans, potatoes, and whatever pie you got hiding back there." He gestured with his chin toward the kitchen. "And don't be thinking about sneaking out the back. Nowhere in this town for you to run that we can't find you." Sophia swallowed hard, nodding. "It will take some time to prepare." "We got all night, sweetheart," Jeb Harker grinned, revealing yellowed teeth. "All night." With no choice, Sophia retreated to her kitchen, the one place that had always brought her comfort since childhood. Now it felt like a trap. She moved mechanically, stoking the fire in the stove, pulling down her cast iron skillet, retrieving potatoes from the bin. Her mind raced. The sheriff was out of town, riding with a posse after cattle rustlers. The deputy was young and inexperienced, no match for 4 hardened outlaws. The nearest neighbors were the blacksmith and his wife, both elderly and unlikely to be of help against armed men. As she sliced potatoes, Sophia tried to formulate a plan. She could hear the men in the dining room, laughing and rifling through her cash box, not that they'd find much. Tuesday nights were always slow, and these men had scared away her only other customers of the evening. "What's taking so long with that food?" Jeb bellowed from the dining room. "Steaks take time to cook properly," Sophia called back, trying to keep her voice steady. "Maybe I should come back there and help you speed things up," the youngest outlaw suggested with a laugh that made her skin crawl. "No need," she said quickly. "I'm making progress." Just then, the bell above the front door jingled. Sophia froze, knife hovering above an onion. A deadly silence fell over the dining room. "We're closed," came Jeb's gruff voice. "That's so," replied a deep, unfamiliar voice. Door was unlocked. Sophia crept toward the doorway between the kitchen and dining room, peering around the frame. A tall man stood just inside the entrance, trailed dust coating his clothing. His face was partially shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat, but she could see he was clean-shaven, with a strong jaw and alert eyes that quickly assessed the room. "I said we're closed," Jeb repeated, his hand moving to the gun at his hip. The newcomer didn't move. "Funny, sign says open till 8. It's only 7:30. His gaze shifted to Sophia in the doorway, and for a brief moment their eyes met. Something passed between them, an unspoken communication that made her breath catch. "Mister, you best turn around and walk right back out that door," the pockmarked outlaw said, standing up, "unless you're looking to get filled with daylight." The stranger's posture remained relaxed, but Sophia noticed how his right hand hovered near his holster. "Just looking for a meal after a long ride." His eyes scanned the four outlaws. "But I can see you boys are having a private meeting, Clayton gang if I'm not mistaken." Jeb stood up so quickly his chair toppled backward. "Who the hell are you?" The stranger's mouth curved into a slight smile. "Name's Brayden Lawson. Some folks call me the Durango Kid." He paused, letting the name hang in the air. "Reckon that means something to you boys." Even from the kitchen doorway, Sophia could see the color drain from the outlaws' faces. The Durango Kid was a name whispered in saloons across the territory, a bounty hunter with a reputation for bringing in wanted men, dead or alive, but mostly dead. "Now," Lawson continued, his voice quiet but carrying a deadly undertone, "I've been tracking you boys for 3 weeks. Didn't expect to find you sitting down to dinner, but it sure makes my job easier." "You're outnumbered, Lawson," Jeb snarled, though Sophia noticed a tremor in his voice. "True," Lawson agreed, "but I only need 1 bullet for each of you, and I've never been known to miss." He took a step forward. "Now, why don't you boys place your guns on the table nice and easy and we can all walk out of here alive?" For a moment, the tension in the room was so thick Sophia could barely breathe. Then, surprisingly, Jeb gave a sharp nod to his companions. "This ain't worth dying over," he muttered. "Not tonight." One by one, the outlaws placed their weapons on the table. Sophia watched in disbelief as the feared Clayton gang, who moments ago had been terrorizing her, now stood with their hands slightly raised. "Smart choice," Lawson said. "Now I believe you were just leaving." "What about our food?" the scarred outlaw grumbled. Lawson's eyes hardened. "I don't recall the lady offering you any." Jeb's face twisted with anger, but he jerked his head toward the door. "Come on, boys, we'll find another place." He fixed Sophia with a cold stare. "We'll be seeing you again, Miss Harper." "I wouldn't count on that," Lawson replied before Sophia could speak, "because I'll be seeing all of you real soon, and next time I might not be feeling so generous." The outlaws filed past Lawson, each giving him a wide berth. When the last one had gone, Sophia released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Her legs suddenly felt weak, and she gripped the doorframe for support. Lawson closed the door behind the outlaws, watching through the window as they mounted their horses and rode away. Only then did he turn to face her. "Are you all right, Miss Harper?" he asked, his voice gentler now. "Yes," she managed, though her voice shook. "Thank you, Mr. Lawson. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't arrived." He removed his hat, revealing thick brown hair that curled slightly at the ends. Up close, she could see his eyes were a striking blue, crinkled at the corners from years of squinting against the sun. He wasn't classically handsome, but there was something compelling about his weathered features. "You can call me Brayden," he said, setting his hat on a nearby table. "And I'm sorry about the Clayton gang. They've been terrorizing this territory for too long." "Are you really going after them?" she asked. He nodded. "I am, but not tonight. They're spooked now, and spooked men make mistakes." "I'll track them come morning." He glanced toward the kitchen. "I meant what I said about being hungry, though. Been riding since dawn with nothing but jerky to sustain me." Despite everything, Sophia found herself smiling. "Well, I have several steaks nearly ready." "It seems a shame to let them go to waste." "That sounds like the best offer I've had in weeks," Brayden said, returning her smile with one that transformed his serious face. "Take a seat," she said, gesturing to a table. "I'll bring you the best meal in White Oaks." As she returned to the kitchen to finish preparing the food, Sophia felt a strange mix of emotions. The fear from the outlaws' visit still lingered, but alongside it was something new, a flutter of interest in the mysterious bounty hunter who had saved her with nothing more than his reputation and steady nerves. Little did she know that this chance encounter would change the course of her life forever. Sophia placed the sizzling steak in front of Brayden, along with a generous helping of fried potatoes and beans. The aroma filled the small dining room, and she took satisfaction in the appreciative look that crossed his face. "This looks incredible," he said, picking up his fork. "It's the least I can do after what you did." She hesitated, then sat down across from him. The restaurant was empty now, and she had already locked the door after the Outlaws' departure. "Are you really him, the Durango kid?" Brayden cut into his steak, taking a moment to savor the first bite before answering. "I am, though I don't much care for the name. Newspapers came up with it a few years back after I brought in the Durango brothers." He shrugged. "The name stuck, and I've found it useful at times." "Like tonight," Sophia observed. He nodded. "Men like the Clayton gang survive on fear. Sometimes turning that fear around is more effective than bullets. But you would have fought them if necessary." Brayden's eyes met hers, serious now. "I would have. Men like that don't deserve to walk free, not after what they've done." Sophia poured him a cup of coffee, noticing the way his hands, strong but surprisingly elegant, wrapped around the mug. "How did you end up tracking outlaws for a living?" A shadow crossed his face. "That's a long story, Miss Harper." "Sophia," she corrected, "and we have time." "I'm not eager to be alone right after those men left." Understanding flickered in his eyes. "Fair enough." He took another bite of steak, then set down his fork. "I was a Texas Ranger for 7 years, thought I was doing good work, upholding the law." His jaw tightened. "Until my partner and I tracked a gang to a small farm. They'd taken a family hostage." Sophia remained silent, sensing this was not a story he told often. "My partner was senior to me, gave the orders. He decided we should wait until nightfall to make our move." Brayden's eyes grew distant. "I wanted to go in immediately. I had a bad feeling, but I followed orders." He took a long sip of coffee. "By the time we went in, the gang had killed the farmer and his wife. Their children were hiding in a root cellar, heard everything." "I'm so sorry," Sophia whispered. "After that, I couldn't wear the badge anymore, couldn't follow orders that might cost innocent lives." He shook his head. "So I turned in my star and started hunting the worst of the worst on my own terms. No waiting for permission, no politics." "And you're good at it," she observed. A wry smile touched his lips. "Good enough to stay alive this long." As they talked, Sophia found herself increasingly drawn to this quiet, intense man. Unlike the few suitors who had pursued her in White Oaks, Brayden Lawson spoke to her as an equal. He listened when she told him about inheriting the restaurant after her father's death, about her struggles to keep it running in a town that was slowly dying as the mining boom faded. "It's not easy being a woman alone in a place like this," she admitted. "Most folks think I should have sold the place and married one of the local ranchers by now." "Why haven't you?" Brayden asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Sophia looked around the small restaurant with its worn but clean tables and the photographs of her parents on the wall. "This place was my father's dream. He saved for years to open it, built it with his own hands." She smiled at the memory. "And it's mine now. I'm good at what I do, and I'm not ready to give that up to become someone's wife, cooking meals I don't get paid for." Brayden chuckled at that. "Can't argue with that logic." His expression grew more serious. "But after tonight, I'm concerned about your safety. The Clayton gang doesn't take kindly to being humiliated." A chill ran down Sophia's spine. "You think they'll come back?" "Not right away," he said. "They'll be looking over their shoulders for me, but eventually if they're not caught." He left the sentence unfinished. "Well, I'll just have to make sure they are caught then," Sophia said with more confidence than she felt. Brayden studied her face. "You're a brave woman, Sophia Harper." "Not brave," she corrected. "Just stubborn. My father always said it would either be my making or my downfall." Their conversation continued as Brayden finished his meal and Sophia brought out apple pie for dessert. She found herself laughing at his dry observations about the characters he'd encountered in his travels. And in turn, she told him stories about the eccentric residents of White Oaks. When he finally stood to leave, nearly 2 hours had passed. "That was the best meal I've had in years," he said, placing money on the table far more than the meal was worth. "That's too much," Sophia protested. "Consider it payment for the company," Brayden replied. "It's rare I get to enjoy conversation that doesn't involve bounties or bullets." He reached for his hat, then hesitated. "I'll be leaving at first light to track the Clayton gang, but I wonder if I might call on you when I return to White Oaks." The question caught Sophia by surprise. Men like Brayden Lawson didn't typically call on women, especially women who ran restaurants and lived alone above their businesses. "I'd like that," she found herself saying. A genuine smile transformed his face. Good. He placed his hat on his head. Lock the door behind me. And if you have a shotgun, keep it close tonight just in case. I do and I will, she assured him. At the door he turned back. Good night, Sophia Harper. Good night, Brayden Lawson, and thank you again. After he left, Sophia locked the door and leaned against it, her heart beating faster than she cared to admit. She told herself it was just the residual fear from the earlier confrontation, but deep down, she knew it was something else entirely. Dawn broke over white oaks, painting the desert landscape in hues of gold and crimson. Sophia had slept poorly, startling at every creak and whisper of wind. Her father's old shotgun had remained within arm's reach all night, though thankfully she hadn't needed it. As she began preparing for the day, mixing biscuit dough and slicing bacon, her thoughts kept returning to Brayden Lawson. By now, he would be tracking the Clayton gang, a dangerous pursuit that few men would willingly undertake. The thought sent a shiver of worry through her. Which was ridiculous, she chided herself. She'd known the man for one evening. His safety was none of her concern. The morning brought the usual customers, miners heading to work. The bank clerk, who always ordered 2 eggs and toast. The elderly Martin sisters, who shared a single cup of coffee between them for nearly 2 hours of gossip. No one mentioned the Clayton gang or the previous night's events, which meant word hadn't spread yet. Sophia kept the incident to herself, not wanting to alarm her patrons. Around midday, Sheriff Thomas Wilkins pushed through the door, his gray mustache twitching as he scanned the room before making his way to the counter. Miss Harper, he greeted, removing his hat. Heard you had some trouble last night. Sophia looked up from the ledger she'd been updating. News travels fast. Small town, he said with a shrug. Edgar at the livery mentioned 4 rough-looking strangers rode out in a hurry last night, and then separately, a man asking about the Clayton gang left at first light. He fixed her with a stern look. Want to tell me what happened? Sophia set aside her pencil and recounted the previous night's events, watching the sheriff's expression grow increasingly grim. The Clayton gang, he muttered when she finished. Right here in my town. He shook his head. And this bounty hunter Lawson, you say he ran them off single-handed. He did, Sophia confirmed. They seemed genuinely afraid of him. Sheriff Wilkins scratched his chin thoughtfully. Heard of the Durango kid, man's got a reputation for bringing in the worst sorts, he frowned. Would have appreciated him checking in with me before conducting business in my jurisdiction, though. He didn't exactly have time for formalities, Sophia pointed out. I suppose not, the sheriff sighed. Still, I don't like bounty hunters. Too many of them are no better than the criminals they chase. He fixed Sophia with a concerned look. You be careful around him if he comes back. Men in that line of work often leave trouble in their wake. Sophia bristled slightly at his tone. Mr. Lawson saved me from 4 dangerous outlaws, Sheriff. I think I can make my own judgments about his character. Wilkins raised his eyebrows but wisely changed the subject. I'll send Billy to keep an eye on your place the next few nights, just in case those outlaws get any ideas about returning. Thank you, Sophia said, genuinely appreciative of the offer despite her irritation. Deputy Billy Collins was young, but he was conscientious and a good shot. After the sheriff left, Sophia found herself distracted throughout the afternoon. Every time the door opened, her head jerked up, half expecting to see Brayden's tall figure. But he didn't return that day, nor the next. 3 days passed with no sign of Brayden Lawson or the Clayton gang. Life in White Oaks continued its steady rhythm, though Sophia noticed customers seemed to linger longer at the restaurant, conversations often turning to rumors of outlaw gangs operating in the territory. On the 4th evening, just as Sophia was preparing to close, the door opened and Sheriff Wilkins entered, accompanied by a telegram operator. Miss Harper, the sheriff said, his expression grim. Just received word you should hear. Sophia's heart lurched. What is it? There was a shootout yesterday near Carrizozo, the sheriff explained. The Clayton gang was involved. And Mr. Lawson? Sophia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sheriff Wilkins exchanged a look with the telegram operator. The message doesn't mention him specifically. Just says 2 men dead, 3 wounded, one of the wounded being Jeb Harker himself. He's in custody now. What about the others? 2 gang members escaped, the sheriff said, and 1 unidentified man was shot. Critical condition, according to this. He tapped the telegram. Sophia sank into a chair, her legs suddenly weak. The unidentified man could be Brayden. He could be dying in some makeshift doctor's office in Carrizozo with no one who cared whether he lived or died. I need to go there, she said suddenly, surprising herself as much as the 2 men. Sheriff Wilkins frowned. Now, Miss Harper, that's hardly appropriate. Carrizozo is nearly 30 miles away and this doesn't concern you directly. Mr. Lawson saved my life, Sophia said firmly. If he's injured, the least I can do is make sure he's properly cared for. You don't even know if it's him, the sheriff argued, all the more reason for me to find out. Sophia stood, her mind made up. Sheriff, I'll be closing the restaurant for a few days. I'd appreciate if you'd keep an eye on the place while I'm gone. The sheriff spluttered protests, but Sophia had already moved to the kitchen to begin preparations for her journey. Early the next morning, Sophia boarded the stagecoach to Carrizozo, a small carpet bag containing a change of clothes and some provisions at her feet. She had left her restaurant in the care of Martha Simmons, a widow who occasionally helped during busy periods. The journey would take most of the day over rough terrain that tested both the coach's springs and the passengers' constitutions. As they traveled, Sophia gazed out at the harsh New Mexico landscape, mesas rising in the distance, scrubby vegetation clinging to red earth, the occasional cluster of cattle seeking shade beneath sparse trees. The beauty of it struck her anew, though she had lived here all her life. The stagecoach made a brief stop at a way station where passengers stretched their legs and drank lukewarm water from a communal dipper. Sophia overheard 2 men discussing the shootout. Heard the Durango kid finally met his match, one said, lighting a cigarette. Nah, replied his companion. Word is he took down 3 of the Clayton boys before they even cleared leather. Bad luck, he got shot from behind by one hiding in the rocks. Sophia stepped closer. Excuse me, gentlemen, you're talking about Brayden Lawson. The men turned to her, surprise evident on their weathered faces. Yes, madam, the first man said. You know him. We're acquainted, Sophia replied carefully. Is he alive? The men exchanged glances. Last we heard, the second man said, Doc Wilson in Carrizozo is tending to him. But it didn't sound good. Bullet caught him in the back, just below the shoulder. Sophia's heart sank, but she thanked the men for the information and returned to the stagecoach with renewed determination. Brayden was alive, at least for now. That was something to hold on to. Carrizozo was a dusty settlement that had sprung up around the railroad. Smaller than White Oaks, it consisted mainly of a single main street lined with wooden buildings. As the stagecoach rolled to a stop, Sophia gathered her belongings and stepped down, asking the driver for directions to the doctor's office. End of the street, madam, he said, pointing. White building with the green door. Sophia made her way there, her anxiety growing with each step. What if Brayden didn't survive? What if he didn't want her here? She had acted on impulse, driven by a connection she barely understood. The doctor's office was small but neat. A bell jangled as she entered, and an elderly man with spectacles perched on his nose looked up from a desk. Can I help you, miss? He asked. I'm looking for Brayden Lawson, Sophia said. I was told he was brought here after being shot. The doctor, presumably Wilson, studied her with curious eyes. You family? No, I'm. Sophia hesitated. A friend, he helped me in White Oaks recently. Doctor. Wilson's expression softened slightly. He's in the back room, been in and out of consciousness since they brought him in. I managed to remove the bullet, but he's lost a lot of blood and there's risk of infection. May I see him? Sophia asked, her throat tight. The doctor considered this, then nodded. Might do him good to hear a friendly voice, just don't expect much response. He led her through a doorway into a small room containing 2 beds, only one was occupied. Brayden lay motionless, his face pale against the white pillow. His chest rose and fell in shallow breaths, and a sheen of sweat covered his forehead. I'll leave you with him, Dr. Wilson said quietly. Call if you need anything or if he stirs. When the doctor had gone, Sophia approached the bed slowly. Brayden looked different in sleep, younger, more vulnerable. His shoulder was heavily bandaged and she could see red beginning to seep through. "Brayden," she said softly, pulling a chair close to the bedside. "It's Sophia from White Oaks." No response. She hadn't expected one, really. "I heard about the shootout," she continued, settling into the chair. "That you caught Jeb Harker. You kept your word." She reached out hesitantly, then took his hand in hers. It was warm, too warm, suggesting fever. "Now I need you to keep another promise. You said you'd call on me when you returned to White Oaks, remember?" For hours, Sophia sat beside him, occasionally refreshing the cool cloth Dr. Wilson had provided for his forehead. She talked intermittently, telling him about her journey, about the restaurant, about growing up in White Oaks. It felt strange at first, speaking to someone who couldn't respond, but gradually it became comforting, like sharing pieces of herself she rarely revealed to others. Night fell, and Dr. Wilson brought her a cup of coffee. "You should get some rest," he suggested. "There's a boarding house across the street." "I'd prefer to stay," Sophia said firmly. The doctor looked like he might argue, but then nodded. "I'll bring you a blanket. The chair isn't comfortable, but it's better than nothing." Throughout the night, Sophia dozed fitfully, waking whenever Brayden stirred or murmured in his fever dreams. Once he called out a name she didn't recognize, Sarah, his voice anguished. Another time, he seemed to be reliving the shootout, his hand twitching as if reaching for his gun. Near dawn, Sophia was startled awake by the feel of her hand being squeezed. She blinked, disoriented, then realized Brayden's eyes were open, focused on her face. "Sophia," his voice was hoarse, barely audible. "Yes," she said, leaning closer. "I'm here." Confusion clouded his features. "Carazozo," he murmured. "How?" "I heard about the shooting," she explained. "I came to make sure you were all right." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Long way to check on a customer." Despite everything, Sophia found herself smiling back. "You're more than a customer, Brayden Lawson." His eyes held hers for a long moment before drifting closed again. But his hand remained wrapped around hers, a silent acknowledgement of her presence. Dr. Wilson, checking on his patient shortly after, seemed pleasantly surprised by Brayden's improvement. "Fever's breaking," he noted, placing a hand on Brayden's forehead. "He's fighting hard." "He's good at that," Sophia said softly. The next 2 days fell into a pattern. Sophia would sit with Brayden during his waking periods, which gradually grew longer. She helped change his bandages, brought him broth from the nearby cafe, and continued to talk with him as his strength slowly returned. During one lucid period, Brayden told her about the confrontation with the Clayton gang. "Tracked them to an abandoned ranch," he explained, his voice still weak but clearer than before. "Had the drop on 3 of them, but the 4th young one with the pockmarked face was hiding, shot me from behind." A grim smile crossed his face. "Still managed to wound him before I went down." "And Jeb Harker?" He paused, seeming to contemplate how much to share. "The sheriff said you captured him," Sophia prompted. Brayden nodded slightly. "He won't be terrorizing anyone else, neither will 2 of his boys." His expression hardened, "but the other 2 got away. Including the one who shot me. The authorities will find them," Sophia said with more confidence than she felt. "Maybe." Brayden didn't sound convinced. After a moment, he changed the subject. "You never told me why you really came all this way, Sophia." She met his gaze steadily. "I think I did. You saved my life. I couldn't just sit in White Oaks wondering if you were dead or alive." Most women would have sent a telegram inquiry, not boarded a stagecoach to a town they've never visited. "I've never claimed to be like most women," Sophia replied. Something flickered in his eyes, amusement, perhaps, or admiration. "No, you certainly haven't." He shifted slightly, wincing at the movement. "Thank you for coming, for staying." "You're welcome," she said simply. "On the 3rd day, Doctor Wilson declared Brayden well enough to travel, provided he took things slowly and had his wound checked regularly." "Where will you go?" Sophia asked as she helped Brayden into a clean shirt she'd purchased from the general store. The simple act of dressing was clearly painful for him, though he tried not to show it. "Thought I might head back to White Oaks," he said, watching her face. "I have unfinished business there." "The restaurant?" Sophia asked, her heart beating faster, among other things. His eyes held hers. "If that's agreeable to you." "It is," she said, unable to keep a smile from spreading across her face. "Very agreeable." They returned to White Oaks together on the stagecoach, a journey made longer by the need to stop frequently so Brayden could stretch and ease the pain in his shoulder. By the time they arrived, word of their coming had somehow preceded them, and curious faces watched from windows as they made their way from the stagecoach stop to Sophia's restaurant. "Quite the homecoming," Brayden observed dryly as yet another person hurriedly crossed the street to avoid them. "Small towns," Sophia sighed. "By tomorrow, there will be at least 3 different stories about why I went to Carazozo and came back with an injured bounty hunter. And all of them scandalous, I imagine, undoubtedly." Martha Simmons was waiting at the restaurant, her round face alight with curiosity as Sophia introduced Brayden. To her credit, she asked no probing questions, simply informed Sophia that business had been steady in her absence and everything was in order. After Martha left, Sophia showed Brayden to the small guest room above the restaurant. "It's not much," she apologized, "but it's clean, and you'll have privacy to recover." Brayden surveyed the simple room with its narrow bed, washstand, and single window overlooking the main street. "It's perfect," he said, "better than I'm accustomed to on the trail." "Rest now," Sophia instructed. "I need to check on things downstairs, but I'll bring up some food later." As she turned to leave, Brayden caught her hand. "Sophia." He seemed to struggle for words. "What you did coming to Carazozo, helping me, no one's done anything like that for me in a very long time." She squeezed his hand gently. "Get used to it, Brayden Lawson. I have a feeling you'll be staying in White Oaks for quite some time." The next few weeks brought significant changes to both their lives. Brayden's shoulder healed slowly but steadily under Sophia's attentive care. When he was strong enough, he began helping around the restaurant first with simple tasks like inventory and bookkeeping, then gradually taking on more physical work as his strength returned. The arrangement raised eyebrows in White Oaks initially. A notorious bounty hunter working in a restaurant was unusual enough, but the obvious growing connection between Sophia and Brayden fueled endless gossip. Sheriff Wilkins made a point of stopping by frequently, ostensibly to check on Brayden's recovery, but clearly keeping a watchful eye on the situation. "He doesn't trust me," Brayden remarked one evening as they closed up the restaurant together. "Can't say I blame him." "Men in my profession aren't known for settling down." Sophia glanced at him as she wiped down tables. "Is that what you're doing, settling down?" Brayden paused in sweeping the floor, leaning on the broom. "I'm not sure what I'm doing," he admitted with uncharacteristic candor. "But I know I'm not in any hurry to leave." Their relationship evolved naturally, without formal declarations. Brayden began joining Sophia on her weekly trips to the mercantile, carrying supplies back to the restaurant. They took evening walks along the outskirts of town, where Brayden pointed out constellations and Sophia shared stories of her childhood. On Sundays, when the restaurant was closed, they rode out to a small creek a few miles outside of town, sharing picnic lunches and comfortable silences. A month after their return to White Oaks, news arrived that shattered their peaceful routine. The 2 remaining members of the Clayton gang had been spotted in a town just 50 miles away. "They're heading this way," Sheriff Wilkins informed them grimly. "Word is they've been asking about you, Lawson, and about Miss Harper." Brayden's face hardened into the mask Sophia had first seen the night they met. "I need to go after them." "You're still healing," Sophia protested, though she knew her words would have little effect. "I've healed enough," Brayden replied. "I can't sit here and wait for them to bring the fight to us, to you." Sheriff Wilkins, despite his initial wariness of Brayden, nodded in agreement. "I'm riding out with a posse tomorrow. We could use a man with your experience, Lawson." "I'll be ready at dawn," Brayden said. That night, after the sheriff left, Sophia and Brayden sat on the small porch behind the restaurant, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. "I don't want you to go," Sophia said finally, breaking a long silence. Brayden turned to look at her, his face partly shadowed in the fading light. "I don't want to leave you," he replied. "But those men are dangerous, Sophia. After what happened in Carazozo, they'll be looking for revenge, and they know you're connected to me now." "Then take me with you," she suggested impulsively. He shook his head. "Absolutely not. It's too dangerous." So I'm supposed to just wait here, not knowing if you're alive or dead? Her voice rose slightly. I've already done that once, Brayden. I don't want to do it again. Brayden reached for her hand, his calloused fingers entwining with hers. I'll come back, he promised. When this is finished, when you're safe, I'll come back. Sophia wanted to argue further, but the determination in his eyes told her it would be futile. Instead, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his in their first kiss. It was brief, almost chaste, but it carried the weight of everything they'd left unspoken. When she pulled back, Brayden's eyes had darkened, and his hand came up to cup her cheek. Sophia, he murmured, before drawing her back to him for a deeper kiss that left them both breathless. Come back to me, she whispered against his lips. Promise me. I promise, he said, and in his voice was an intensity that made her believe him. Dawn came too quickly. Sophia prepared a hearty breakfast for Brayden and packed provisions for his journey. They spoke little, each lost in their own thoughts about what might lie ahead. As Brayden prepared to leave, strapping on his gun belt and checking his weapons with practiced efficiency, Sophia handed him a small cloth-wrapped package. What's this? He asked. A token, she said. Open it when you're alone. He tucked it carefully into his saddlebag, then drew her into his arms one last time. I'll be back before you know it, he said against her hair. You'd better be, she replied, trying to keep her voice light. I've grown accustomed to having help with the dinner rush. His laugh was warm against her ear. Is that all I am to you? Free labor? She pulled back to look at him, suddenly serious. You know you're much more than that, Brayden Lawson. He kissed her once more, then mounted his horse and rode to join the sheriff and his posse at the edge of town. Sophia watched until they disappeared from view, then returned to the restaurant, throwing herself into work to keep worry at bay. 3 days passed with no word. Sophia kept the restaurant running, smiling for customers while anxiety gnawed at her insides. On the 4th day, a rider arrived from the sheriff's office in Lincoln County with news. There had been a confrontation with the Clayton remnants. One outlaw was dead, the other captured. The posse had suffered casualties as well, 2 men wounded, including Sheriff Wilkins, who had taken a bullet in the leg. And Brayden Lawson? Sophia asked, her heart in her throat. Don't know any Lawson, the rider said. Sheriff didn't mention him in his message. That night, Sophia couldn't sleep. She paced the floor of her bedroom, imagining worst-case scenarios. Had Brayden been killed? Was he lying wounded somewhere, unable to send word, or had he simply decided not to return to White Oaks to her? The next morning, she opened the restaurant as usual, though she moved through her tasks mechanically. The lunch rush had just begun when the door opened, and Brayden walked in, dusty from travel but very much alive. Sophia froze, a pot of coffee suspended mid-pour. Then, heedless of watching customers, she set down the pot and rushed to him, throwing her arms around his neck. You're back, she breathed, inhaling the scent of him leather, dust, and something uniquely Brayden. His arms came around her, holding her close despite their audience. I promised I would be, he said, his voice low and meant only for her. Later, after the restaurant closed, Brayden told her what had happened. They had tracked the outlaws to a canyon where an ambush awaited. The ensuing gunfight had been chaotic, with Sheriff Wilkins taking a bullet early on. We were pinned down, Brayden explained as they sat at a table in the empty restaurant. The pockmarked one Davis was his name, had the high ground. I managed to work my way around behind him. He paused, taking a sip of coffee. He didn't see me coming. So it's over? Sophia asked. Truly over. Brayden nodded. The Clayton gang is finished. Jeb Harker will hang, and so will Davis. The others are dead. He reached across the table, taking her hand. You're safe now. Relief washed over Sophia, but it was quickly followed by a new uncertainty. With the threat eliminated, what reason did Brayden have to stay in White Oaks? As if reading her thoughts, he said, I opened your token, the handkerchief with your initials. It's silly, she said, suddenly embarrassed. An old tradition. My mother always said a lady should give a token to a gentleman going into danger to remind him he has reason to return safely. It's not silly, Brayden replied, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. I kept it close, thought of you every time I touched it. His eyes met hers. It reminded me I had something to come back to, someone. Sophia's heart quickened. And now that you're back, Brayden said slowly, I find myself thinking about the future, something I haven't done in a long time. He paused. Sheriff Wilkins won't be able to perform his duties for several months, maybe longer. He's asked me to serve as temporary sheriff until he recovers. Here, in White Oaks, Sophia couldn't keep the hopeful note from her voice. Brayden nodded. It would mean staying in one place. Hanging up my bounty hunting days, at least for a while. His expression grew uncertain. Would that be agreeable to you? Sophia's smile was answer enough, but she said it anyway. More than agreeable, Brayden. It would make me very happy. In the weeks that followed, White Oaks adjusted to its new temporary sheriff. Brayden moved from the guest room above the restaurant to the small house behind the sheriff's office, though he still spent most of his evenings with Sophia. Their courtship, no longer hidden, became the subject of approving nods rather than suspicious whispers as the townspeople came to appreciate Brayden's fair approach to law enforcement and his obvious devotion to Sophia. Summer turned to autumn, bringing cooler temperatures and spectacular sunsets that Sophia and Brayden often watched from the restaurant's back porch. On one such evening, as golden light bathed the landscape, Brayden seemed unusually pensive. What are you thinking about? Sophia asked, leaning against his good shoulder. The first night we met, he replied. How close I came to riding past White Oaks entirely. What made you stop? He smiled. Hunger and luck, the best luck of my life, as it turns out. Sophia laughed softly. Those outlaws certainly didn't think it was lucky when you walked in. No, I suppose not. His arm tightened around her. Sophia, there's something I've been wanting to ask you. She turned to look at him, noting the serious set of his features. Yes. Brayden reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object that caught the fading sunlight. A ring, a simple gold band with a modest pearl. I'm not a wealthy man, he said, his voice low and earnest, and I can't promise life with me will always be easy. But I can promise to love you, protect you, and stand beside you for as long as I live. He held out the ring. Sophia Harper, will you marry me? Tears sprang to Sophia's eyes as she looked from the ring to Brayden's face, so full of love and hope. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you, Brayden Lawson. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Sophia marveled at how her life had changed in just a few short months, all because 4 outlaws had demanded she cook for them, and a cowboy had walked in, sending them away without eating. It seemed almost like fate. Their wedding took place on a crisp October day, with golden leaves drifting down from the cottonwoods that lined White Oaks Main Street. The entire town turned out for the occasion, filling the small church to capacity. Sheriff Wilkins, still using crutches but recovering well, gave Sophia away in the absence of her father. Brayden, standing at the altar in a new suit, watched with undisguised awe as Sophia walked toward him in a cream-colored dress adorned with her mother's lace. When they exchanged vows, his voice was steady and sure, a promise he intended to keep for a lifetime. The reception was held at the restaurant, transformed for the occasion with flowers and ribbons. As the newly married couple danced to music provided by local musicians, Sophia caught glimpses of their future in Brayden's eyes, a future neither of them could have imagined on that fateful night when he had first walked through her door. Happy, Mrs. Lawson. Brayden murmured as they swayed to the music. Happier than I ever thought possible, Sophia replied, stretching up to kiss him, uncaring of the approving murmurs from their guests. Later that night, as they prepared to leave for the small house that would now be their home, Martha Simmons approached with a wrapped package. A wedding gift, she explained, pressing it into Sophia's hands. From all of us. Inside was a sign, beautifully carved and painted. Lawson's Eatery, it read, with the date of their wedding inscribed below. For when you reopen, Martha said. We thought, well, it's your place now, both of yours. Tears filled Sophia's eyes as she traced the letters. It's perfect, she said, looking from Martha to the gathered townspeople who had become her extended family. Thank you all. As they walked to their new home, Sophia carrying the sign and Brayden's arm around her waist, she felt a contentment she had never known before. The restaurant would continue, but now as a shared dream rather than a solitary one. And Brayden, the man who had walked into her life when she needed him most, would be by her side through whatever the future held. "What are you thinking about?" Brayden asked, noticing her smile. "About how sometimes the most unexpected beginnings lead to the most perfect endings," Sophia replied, leaning into his embrace as they stepped into their future together. In the years that followed, Brayden and Sophia built a life together that neither could have imagined on that first dramatic night. Sheriff Wilkins, finding that he preferred a quieter life after his injury, officially appointed Brayden as his replacement, and the former bounty hunter embraced his new role with the same dedication he had once applied to tracking outlaws. Lawson's eatery flourished under their joint management, becoming known throughout the territory for its exceptional food and warm hospitality. Sophia expanded the menu, incorporating recipes from Brayden's travels, while he renovated the building, adding a larger dining room to accommodate their growing clientele. Their first child, a son they named James, arrived a year after their wedding, a strong, healthy boy with Sophia's dark hair and Brayden's blue eyes. 2 years later, they welcomed a daughter, Eleanor, whose spirit and determination reminded them both of Sophia's father. As their family grew, so did their connections to White Oaks. What had once been Sophia's sanctuary became the heart of a community that embraced the Lawsons as their own. Travelers passing through often remarked on the unusual sight of a sheriff who could be found serving meals in his wife's restaurant when not on duty. But locals simply smiled, knowing the story that had brought them together. On the 5th anniversary of their meeting, Brayden surprised Sophia by closing the restaurant for a private celebration. When she arrived that evening, she found the dining room transformed, tables pushed back to create an open space, candles providing soft illumination, and wildflowers arranged in simple vases. "What is all this?" she asked, taking in the scene with delight. Brayden, who had arranged for the children to spend the night with Martha Simmons, approached with 2 glasses of wine. "I thought we should commemorate the night that changed both our lives," he said, handing her a glass. "The night 4 outlaws demanded I cook for them," Sophia reminisced, "and you walked in and sent them running without eating a bite. Best decision those outlaws ever made," Brayden remarked with a grin. "Running, I mean. And what about you?" Sophia asked, stepping closer to him. "Any regrets about walking into this place that night?" Brayden set down his glass and took hers, placing it beside his on a nearby table. His hands came up to frame her face, his expression growing serious. "Not a single one," he said softly. "Every day with you has been a gift, Sophia. Every moment a blessing I never thought I'd have." She leaned into his touch. "Even when I'm scolding you for tracking mud into the kitchen, or when James decides to use your sheriff's badge as a toy, even then," he assured her with a laugh. "Especially then." Brayden pulled her closer, into a dance with no music except the beating of their hearts. As they moved together in the candlelight, Sophia reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment, from fear to trust, from uncertainty to unwavering commitment, from 2 solitary souls to a family bound by love. "You know," Brayden murmured against her hair, "I've been thinking about that deputy position that's opening up." "Oh," Sophia looked up at him, curious. "I was considering recommending Billy Collins for it, but he'd need training." Sophia smiled, knowing where this was heading. "And you're thinking of taking that on yourself?" Brayden nodded. "It would mean more regular hours, more time at home, with you and the children." He paused. "What do you think?" "I think," Sophia said, rising on tiptoe to kiss him, "that sounds perfect." Later that night, as they lay together in the quiet of their bedroom, Sophia traced the scar on Brayden's shoulder, a permanent reminder of his former life and the risks he had taken to ensure their safety. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked softly. The excitement of the hunt, the freedom of the trail. Brayden was quiet for a moment, considering her question. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it," he admitted, knowing exactly who the enemy was, having a clear purpose. His hand found hers in the darkness. "But I've found something better here, something I didn't know I was looking for until I found it." "And what's that?" Sophia asked, though she knew the answer. "Home," Brayden said simply. You, James, Alina, you're my home, Sophia, and that's worth more than all the bounties in the territory. Sophia snuggled closer, resting her head on his chest where she could hear the steady rhythm of his heart. I love you, Brayden Lawson, she whispered. And I love you, Sophia Lawson, he replied, his arms tightening around her. Today, tomorrow, and for all the days to come. As they drifted toward sleep, Sophia thought about the unpredictable nature of life, how a moment of danger had led to a lifetime of joy, how a chance encounter had become a love story that would be told in White Oaks for generations. And she was thankful, deeply thankful, for 4 outlaws who had demanded she cook for them, and for the courageous cowboy who had walked in and changed her life forever. The years continued to unfold with the steady rhythm of frontier life, marked by the changing seasons and the growth of their children. James, now 10, showed signs of his father's quiet strength and keen observational skills. Alina, at 8, had inherited Sophia's culinary talents and entrepreneurial spirit, often suggesting new dishes for the restaurant menu. White Oaks itself was changing too. The railroad had brought new prosperity to the region, and the town was growing steadily. Lawson's Eatery remained a constant, though a gathering place where miners, ranchers, and townspeople came together over Sophia's renowned cooking. Brayden had settled comfortably into his role as sheriff, respected throughout the county for his fair-mindedness and unwavering integrity. The dangerous bounty hunter of his past was now a distant memory to most, though occasionally travelers passing through would recognize his name and regard him with cautious respect. On a warm spring morning, as Sophia prepared for the day's business in the restaurant kitchen, Alina burst through the door, her dark braids flying. Mama, Papa says to come quick. There's a letter from Washington. Curious, Sophia wiped her hands on her apron and followed her daughter to their home behind the restaurant, where Brayden sat at the kitchen table, an official-looking document spread before him. What is it? Sophia asked, noting the serious expression on her husband's face. Brayden looked up, a mixture of surprise and pride in his eyes. It's from the territorial governor. I've been recommended for appointment as U.S. Marshal for the New Mexico Territory. Sophia sank into a chair, stunned. Marshal, but that would mean. Relocating to Santa Fe, Brayden finished for her. Overseeing law enforcement for the entire territory, the implications hung in the air between them. Such a position would be a tremendous honor recognition of Brayden's years of service and his reputation for justice. But it would also mean leaving White Oaks, the restaurant, the life they had built together. What are you thinking? Sophia asked, studying her husband's face. Brayden folded the letter carefully. I'm thinking that 10 years ago I would have accepted without hesitation. It's the kind of position I once dreamed of. He reached across the table, taking her hand. But now I find myself wondering what you would think, what would be best for our family. Sophia squeezed his hand, touched by his consideration. It's an incredible opportunity, Brayden, you've earned it. But the restaurant can be sold, or perhaps Martha would be interested in taking it over, Sophia said practically. The children would have better educational opportunities in Santa Fe, and you, she smiled. You would be doing what you're truly exceptional at, bringing law and order to places that need it. Brayden's expression softened. You would be willing to leave White Oaks after all these years. My home isn't a building or even a town, Sophia said softly, echoing words he had once spoken to her. It's wherever you and our children are. After much discussion and careful consideration, Brayden accepted the appointment. The news spread quickly through White Oaks, met with a bittersweet mixture of pride and sadness from the townspeople who had come to rely on both Lawsons. The transition was not without challenges. Martha Simmons agreed to purchase the restaurant, ensuring Sophia's legacy would continue. Their house sold quickly to a young doctor and his wife who had recently arrived in town. Saying goodbye to the place where they had fallen in love and raised their children thus far was harder than either had anticipated. Are you sure about this? Brayden asked the night before their departure as they sat on their porch one last time, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and crimson. Sophia rested her head on his shoulder. I'm sure about you, she replied. Everything else is just details. Santa Fe welcomed the Lawson family with the bustling energy of a territorial capital. Their new home, provided as part of Brayden's position, was larger and more elegant than their house in White Oaks, situated in a respectable neighborhood near the plaza. The children adapted quickly, as young ones often do. James thrived in the more rigorous school, while Alina discovered a passion for the Spanish language and culture that permeated the city. Sophia, after initially feeling adrift without her restaurant, found new purpose in organizing social events for the territorial officials and their families' gatherings that soon became known for their warmth and exceptional refreshments. Brayden's transition to Marshall was seamless. His reputation had preceded him, and his practical experience earned the respect of deputies throughout the territory. Though his new position kept him busier than before, sometimes requiring travel to distant parts of New Mexico, he made a point of reserving Sundays exclusively for his family. On one such Sunday, as they picnicked in a meadow outside the city, Sophia watched Brayden teaching James how to track animal prints while Alina collected wildflowers nearby. A sense of profound contentment washed over her. "Penny for your thoughts," Brayden said, dropping down beside her on the blanket. "I was just thinking about how far we've come," Sophia replied, watching their children. "From that night in the restaurant to this moment, sometimes it seems like a dream." Brayden followed her gaze. "If it is, I hope we never wake up." He reached for her hand, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing over their years together. "Any regrets?" Sophia turned to him, taking in the face she had loved for so long now, with threads of silver at his temples and lines of experience around his eyes, but still unmistakably the man who had walked into her restaurant and her heart all those years ago. "Not a single one," she said, leaning forward to kiss him softly. As the years passed, the Lawson family put down roots in Santa Fe. James, following in his father's footsteps, eventually joined the Territorial Rangers. Alina surprised them all by opening a restaurant that blended her mother's recipes with local New Mexican cuisine, creating dishes that drew patrons from miles around. Brayden served as marshal until the turn of the century, when New Mexico's push for statehood began in earnest. By then, he and Sophia were ready for a quieter chapter. They purchased a small ranch outside Santa Fe, where Brayden could indulge his long-suppressed desire to raise horses and Sophia could tend a garden that supplied Alina's restaurant with fresh produce. Their grandchildren, 4 from James and his wife Catherine, 3 from Alina and her husband Michael, filled their later years with noise, laughter, and the sweet chaos of family gatherings. On holidays, the ranch house overflowed with 3 generations of Lawsons, each meal a celebration of the legacy Sophia and Brayden had built together. On the 40th anniversary of their meeting, their children organized a surprise celebration. The entire family gathered at Alina's restaurant, which she had closed for the private event. As Sophia and Brayden entered, they were greeted by applause from their loved ones and the sight of a replica sign. Lawson's Eatery, established 1884. "We wanted to honor where it all began," James explained, his arm around his father's shoulders. Alina stepped forward with a leather-bound album. "And we collected stories from everyone about what your love has meant to them." As they paged through the album together, reading messages from their children, grandchildren, and friends who had known them throughout their journey, Sophia felt tears welling in her eyes. "We've been blessed," she whispered to Brayden. He nodded, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "Beyond measure." Later that evening, as the younger generations continued the celebration, Brayden led Sophia outside to a small courtyard where the stars shone overhead, much as they had on that night in White Oaks so many years before. "Dance with me," he asked, extending his hand just as he had on their wedding day, though they were both in their 70s now. They moved together with the easy grace that comes from decades of knowing each other's rhythms. No music played except the distant sounds of their family's laughter and the whisper of the desert wind. 40 years, Brayden marveled, his voice low. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I walked into your restaurant, hungry and trail-worn." "And sometimes it feels like we've always been together," Sophia replied. As if my life didn't truly begin until that moment, Brayden's arms tightened around her. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For taking a chance on a bounty hunter, for building a life with me. For our children, our grandchildren." His voice grew husky with emotion. "For everything, Sophia." She reached up to touch his face, still so dear to her after all these years. "Thank you for walking into my restaurant that night, for saving me from those outlaws." Brayden smiled, the same smile that had first captured her heart. "Best decision I ever made walking through that door, and the best meal those outlaws never ate," Sophia added with a soft laugh. As they continued to dance beneath the stars, surrounded by the legacy of their love, Sophia reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with a moment of danger and led to a lifetime of joy. From a small restaurant in White Oaks to a ranch outside Santa Fe, from a lone woman and a solitary bounty hunter to the matriarch and patriarch of a thriving family, their story had unfolded in ways neither could have imagined on that fateful night. "I love you, Brayden Lawson," Sophia whispered, the words as true now as they had been the first time she spoke them. "And I love you, Sophia Lawson," he replied, "today, tomorrow, and for all the days to come." In that moment, under the vast New Mexico sky, they were once again the young couple who had found each other against all odds, a restaurateur with a fierce, independent streak and a bounty hunter seeking redemption. And though time had changed them in countless ways, the essence of their love remained constant. A beacon that had guided them through every challenge, a flame that would continue to burn bright in the hearts of all who knew their story. It was a love that had begun when 4 outlaws demanded she cook for them. A cowboy walked in, and they left without eating. A love that had endured through decades of change and growth. A love that would be remembered long after they were gone, living on in the family they had created together, and the tales that would be told of the legendary Marshal Lawson and his beloved Sophia, whose courage and commitment to each other had become the stuff of Western legend. And as they danced beneath the stars, Sophia knew with absolute certainty that if she had to do it all over again, face down those outlaws, take a chance on a dangerous man with kind eyes, build a life in the untamed territory, she would make the same choice every time. For what they had found together was rarer than gold and more precious than any treasure. A love that had not merely endured but had flourished, growing deeper and richer with each passing year. In a land where happy endings were far from guaranteed, Sophia and Brayden Lawson had claimed theirs not through luck or fate, but through unwavering faith in each other and the willingness to fight for the life they had dreamed of building together. Their story, which had begun in fear and uncertainty, had blossomed into one of the greatest love stories the West had ever known. And as they returned to their celebration, hand in hand, surrounded by the family that was their greatest legacy, both knew that whatever adventures still awaited them in their remaining years together, they would face them as they had faced everything else side by side, their love a fortress against whatever storms might come. For in the end, that was the true measure of their journey, not the positions they had held or the places they had lived, but the enduring bond between them that had transformed 2 separate paths into one shared destiny. A destiny that had begun on a fateful evening in White Oaks when 4 outlaws demanded she cook for them. A cowboy walked in, and they left without eating.